Alright guys, a little bit more EGR information for you. This vehicle's come in for an injector replacement, and the client believed that, you know, the EGR, we've had a look in there, we had the intercooler off, looks alright, doesn't look too bad. And he says, oh yeah, still, you know, steel colour on the EGR valve. And I said, oh, well, I'm like completely surprised. I'm like, that's interesting, okay, right. I'm just listening, you know, that's what I do, I listen. And it doesn't really make sense. And then he goes on to tell me how when he purchased the car, the crankcase ventilation, you know, that little elbow there that joins to the pipe that goes to the turbo, it was connected to atmosphere, which means that's good and bad. It's not legal or anything like that. It can make some mess, it can be dangerous, it can put a bit of oil on the road for the motorbike riders in the wet. They won't be too happy with you. But long story short, basically no oil would be in the intake. So I figured maybe someone's cleaned it and they've disconnected that, and even though you've got the bad EGR soot going through, not good for the engine, it's not going to stick because it's dry. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe that's what it is, but normally it still blasts everything black. So I'm like, I didn't understand the alloy part. So are you feeling like me, you can't wait to see it? So obviously what we got here is the EGR valve, right? So the first thing we did, we took the throttle body off this side here and had a bit of a look to see what is going on in there and why it's so clean. Now what I didn't do, I didn't switch the light on, so let me switch the light on. Okay, lights, camera, action. We got the light on now, so let's have a look at this clean EGR, right? This is a clean one apparently, right? Now, I don't know what's still silver or still alloy in colour. I don't know if this is built up since he undid whatever's been done, because what it's had since then, my understanding is, he purchased the vehicle, it was a Queensland vehicle, so for roadworthy, for registration everything, it would have needed a roadworthy, and of course you can't have that connected to atmosphere, so he installed, or had installed, a catch can. And if this was clean and then a catch can was installed, this is even more evidence to show you exactly how well a catch can works. Now, I don't know that this was clean. I didn't see it clean. I'm going by what he tells me. He's not a mechanic or anything like that. He's just an owner. He's, I think it was his son-in-law, maybe some sort of mechanic or something like that, and possibly together they had the intercooler off. And the description to me was it's still steel colour. And you can see quite clearly it's not. This is quite dirty. Let's have a look in the other side and see what it's like at the other end, because this is just typical. This is typical of it, and it's an 07 120 Pro. It's done 210,000 Ks roughly, somewhere just over the 200 anyway. Original injectors probably, by the looks of it, whatever, you know. We're just getting it apart, having a look at it now. So let's have a look at the other side here and see what the build-up's like, right? Let's just check it out, right? Now, this is where the exhaust gases go in, right? So you're gonna, that's sort of typical there, right? You know, not that you can see much depending how the light shines, right? Have a look. This is the bottom of the elbow, right? You know, this is not exciting. Look at that. That is not exciting, is it? When I look in there like that, you got to be careful when you're looking at manifold, guys, because that surface can be really scary. See that surface there? Right there, it's like a horror movie, isn't it? I know, it's like a horror movie. It's just disgusting. Have a look at that picture. When you stick a camera down the intake manifold and look at that and you go, oh no, it doesn't tell you much. I mean, look, that's, how fine detail is that up close? It's really fine, it looks really bad. It looks like a volcano or something, doesn't it? Like I said, something from a horror movie. But in this case, there's quite a build up there. You can see it's around about 8, 9, 10 millimeters thick in places. You know, over this side's about, I can tell you, that's about 3 or 4. Over this side's getting close to 10. Over here's about, oh, that's about 8. And up the top here, it's around about 9 or 10 as well. So it's quite a thick build up. And it does go down into the manifold. So let's go and have a look at that and explain how we're going to manage this one. And hopefully it'll be a bada bing and not a bada boom. Alright, so this is on the vehicle. Okay. Yes. Right, it's not a good look. From here, not a good look, but it never usually is. I shouldn't say never, because sometimes it is and it's hard to see. So how do we manage this? Well, this end of the EGR cooler here, this is the worst of it's going to be just there. So a bit of a scrape and a vac. Notice it's kind of dry. There's usually no oil that comes through there. The worst of that oil is just a little bit from the intake because it joins onto the intake right there at that end there. So normally that's all you usually need to clean, right? Now if you've had a problem where you've had other issues with the vehicle and you've had oil or water, something through the cooler, that's where you've got to clean the cooler, but you don't normally have to clean this. If you've got a P0400 before you do this job, then cleaning out the EGR cooler and making sure this shaft is moving it like that, you know, should just go pretty easily, you know. I'm not like that. That's how that should work. If that's stiff, tight, whatever, then you know, you don't have to remove the whole cooler. You can just undo these 3 bolts I've mentioned in other videos, but this one's mainly to show you management here. Now in a perfect world, yeah, let's just pull the manifold off and clean it out. That's great, but by the time you get the manifold off, from this point here, where we are now, to get the manifold off, to get it clean to what standard, you know, where does it end, you know, to perfect? And then you've got the head, you've got the ports into the head and around the valves. You can literally spend days cleaning that, depending how clean and perfect you want to be, right? And look how filthy this is. Yeah, right. It's pretty average, and we cleaned it up before we were. They have been out before because I can see the alignment there is not quite right. But so how do you manage this? It's a dilemma because really, it's about $1,000. By the time I go from this step to take that manifold off, all the labour to R&R the manifold, add the gaskets, add the coolant, because I'm going to just drop the coolant and, you know, freshen it all up because we don't want to have coolant around here. We've got to take these hoses off. You know, you can leave the hoses in the way and try and cap them, and it leaks a bit and it makes mess, gets all sticky. No good. I just want to drop it out so that when I take these hoses off, there's no water or anything near here, right? It's a diesel fuel system we're working on nearby. We want it to be 100% clean. So, let's say ballpark 1,000, right? And some people are going, oh, that's a lot. And some people will be going, yeah, you know, good luck, you can do it for $1,000, you know. Because at the end of the day, it all depends how long the time you spend to take, you know, and how well you clean those ports in the head and around the valves. And I'd say for $1,000, you're not going to get a perfect job. I've seen some photos sent to me from clients that is absolutely awesome what they've done. They've spent days on these vehicles, right? If I spend days on it, it's going to cost you thousands, mate. You know, it gets to the point it's just not worth it anymore. So I've got to have a balance of what's worth cleaning or not. And this is what this video is designed to do, to show you that, you know, this is typical. I don't know if you take that crankcase ventilation off and install a catch can if they work. There's a bit of evidence there that, you know, something along those lines there didn't work, or maybe it was caked up already. Who knows, really? History, we don't know. But how do we manage this mess in here now? Well, what we've got to do is, when you look at it right there like that, that is the worst of it usually, okay? So looking at that, you're going, oh, and I haven't got right up there to have a good look, right? Every time the soot goes around a corner, it hits the outside of the bend and it cakes up, and that's the outside of the bend right there. And that will, as it comes around and it goes boom, and the worst of it is right there. So if you look at that, you might just go, oh yeah, you know, that's terrible. And then you might be right. The best thing to do is to remove the manifold and clean it. But when you've got an already expensive job with injectors, pipes, seals and gaskets, labour to do that, even an EGR clean, you're already up there. And then you add a manifold to it, it just gets right up there. And if the vehicle's running well, I'll say that it doesn't necessarily need it. If you got a solution, a lot of people get remaps, and I'm not recommending remaps, but they get EGRs shut off. People put the plate with a 7mm hole. That's a solution, reducing the EGR. If you're going to do that, and then you've got the oil of the old engine washing it through, plus some intake cleaners, you can give this a really good scrape out, and 90% of what looks really bad there, right, 90% of the time, that's the worst of it, okay? There's been times we've gone, oh, I reckon we should pull this manifold off and give it a clean, and then we've got the damn thing off and gone, look at the ports, they're not too bad. Yeah, admittedly, they're black and they've got a bit of soot and stuff like that on them, but sometimes it just wasn't worth it, you know? It didn't open them up, they weren't blocked. So we've got to determine, and it's almost impossible, it's hard enough to see. So, you know, some people said, can you make a video looking down in there? It doesn't matter whether I make a video or not, because even if you look in this manifold, yours isn't going to be the same. It's not going to tell you whether yours needs doing or not. It's going to be like the picture earlier in the video where it looks like a volcano and all that anyway. You've got to be able to judge from the size, and that's where what works best for me is, once we clean all this out of the way, I'm talking in the first 2 to 3 inches. I'm not talking going past the manifold into the head. I'm talking just get this out of the way, all this stuff here. scrape it out, vac it out, don't push it in, make sure you get it all out. And then we're going to take a look down into number 4 port that way and see if it's still a rectangle. If it's still a rectangle, and this is the worst of it usually at this end, then it's probably not worth pulling the manifold off. Then we're going to get a mirror and stick it in there and look back forwards up the manifold. We're going to stick our fingers up there and have a feel and a scrape and dig a fingernail in and see how thick it is. And if it's only, as I said before in other videos, a millimetre or two, we're probably, we're going to go, you know, it's a waste of, it's not a waste. Now there's a difference. If you're paying someone $1,000 to do this job, or you're doing it yourself, it's only your own time. There's a big difference there. Now, it's a lot of money, but the other thing to consider is you're not going to do it again for another 10, well, you're not going to do it ever. If you put a solution in place, you're never going to do it again. It's going to stay clean. So that's something to think about. So it's a bada bing, bada boom. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to scrape all that out, and maybe in another video we'll show you what it looks like afterwards, whatever. So if you haven't already, now's the time to subscribe, turn the bell on so you don't miss the next important bit of information. This is what we call this. So call this video, what do you want to call it? Volcano EGR. There you go, Volcano EGR. That might get some attention. Help you guys understand. And all the newer vehicles, they've got stricter emissions to meet. Stricter emissions, more EGR flow, unless they've got AdBlue. If it's an AdBlue system, it shouldn't have an EGR system or any of this mess, which is kind of a real positive when you, once you see this disastrous stuff. Have a good look at that before we go. I'm going to turn you upside and inside out a little bit, but look, another video, guys. You know, we can't really get in there. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. So if you haven't already, subscribe, turn the bell on, and please give us a thumbs up if you got something out of that. Bada bing, bada boom, all right?